I noticed that most people today are brainwashed. And for example, it's like taking a horse to water, and you get them there, and once they've been told that this is not water, and you can take them to the water, and they'll see that as water, but they won't believe that is water because they have believed into a lie that it's not water, it's not clear, it's not good to drink.
Yeah.
What causes that type of brainwashing, and how can you overcome that?
I think a part of that is the fear of being ostracized and left out. If you speak out against it, it's, that's not water, right? If you say that is water and you're
Right.
being convinced it's not, you're basically invested in a network already. Either you're protecting status, whatever, you're protecting income. A lot of times you see. And so I think that plays a part of it. I think people actually protect their behaviors in a way. And I think it's rebellion. I think it's fundamental to Christianity to point out where we rebel as ourselves and be honest there, but also it's our duty to call out where people are rebelling. And what they're doing is rejecting truth. And so if you reject truth, then you can be vulnerable to being convinced water's not water, and you can be convinced that a woman's not a woman and a man is a woman and all this stuff, because the starting premise is that we create truth, and that's not the case. We don't create truth. We're
Right.
humans. We can discern truth, but truth is an absolute concept that requires an absolute mind, and that mind is God, and it can't be any other way. It can't be an animal. It can't be another human. It's not Trump. It's not Obama. These are all men, right? We're all men.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that begins. Now, when you ask, well, how do you remedy that? I think people have to confront that deep issue. You ask them point blank, is truth absolute? If they say no, then they've contradicted themselves. And then if they're honest with themselves, they'll have to sit with that contradiction and figure out, well, wow, I've never really thought about that. How do I account for that there's truth in the world, right? It's not physical. The truth isn't, it's not a tree. It's not you know what I mean? It's not our computers. So I kind of push people that direction. Now I try not to hammer them with sort of like a righteous gavel on their head or folders of information, because specifically Christianity, we interact person to person. When we get to know each other through our personhood, we get to see each other and our flaws, and there's a trust that's sort of generated. And I think that's a really important part of interacting with people, even people who you think are just completely lost it. Like, you know, it's hard for me sometimes. I go to Wrath, and I'm lucky to have comics and memes to use my wrath and sort of like transform it into humor, and so that I'm back to joyfulness and not wrathfulness. That would definitely be my weakness. But that's a challenge with people when you talk to them online or in person, and you have these deep disagreements, right? It's our job to kind of like align with some compassion, and I don't mean compassion like the left side defines compassion, right?
Right. You make a good point with your memes. When I was looking at them, they're funny, but in the relaxation of them being funny, you get understanding from it too. It's like you don't totally shut it out.
Right.
Because for some reason, the humor part of it relaxes. I don't know if it relaxes the mind or something, where you can start to see, wow, this is weird. This makes sense. This is funny. That does seem to help a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's a softening of the heart. It's basically hitting hard truths through a soft aspect. So it is a dagger. It is a truth, a sword of truth, but it's softened. And I think that's why there's such a war on like humor and comedy, all the comedians getting banned here and there. And what they're doing is kind of like trying to make it impossible to say very basic truths, and that's how, like, in the world of like stand-up comedy, you notice like the premise is always a baseline truth about reality, whether it's a generalization of white people or black people or Jews or Asians or whatever. The freedom to do that is like jester's privilege, right? And so when you take that away, people can't actually unify and be softened, because you're taking away the ability for them to be softened with that initial premise where they go, yeah, we all are kind of ridiculous, aren't we? Right. But when you take that away, you do a really big disservice to people. The best form of inclusivity is being the product, being the subject of a joke.
That's right, man. Absolutely. I was arguing with, not arguing with someone, but I was talking to someone the other day, and they was talking about, in America today, I guess around the world, they had taken off the physical body parts of males and put on female body parts, and they're doing it to the girls as well. And I said to them, well, it doesn't matter that they take off the body part. A boy is still a boy, and a girl is still a girl. And they didn't want to believe that. They couldn't accept that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can you? What made you think just because they took the robot's part off, it's still not a robot? And they didn't want to accept that. That was the darndest thing I ever seen.
Yeah, that's a rejection of truth itself. You defend, if you start from truth is created, which these people mostly do, it's a construct, right? Everything's a construct. Well, if everything's a construct, you can't even argue for that thing, right? So
Right.
this whole inversion of, taking parts of the body off and pretending, this is what we have to understand. There is the logical, the ability to use logic to completely reduce their position to nonsense. But also, they have to be in such a form of like hell here, right? To be living in a position, in a mindset where that's possible for them.
Yeah.
And I really get to that point. Sometimes I get like so annoyed where they're so irrational that I just like kind of lose my patience. But then on the other side, we all have to understand that the punishment is almost embedded in their mindset, in their view, right? So it's not like they're escaping the punishment. Even here, right? Forget, not even to mention, what the eternal punishment or judgment, which we can't really make full calls on, but here they're living in a sort of a delusional state. And I really feel bad for people living in delusional states because they can't navigate what's true or not, right? They'll never get to it, right? And, that, especially that, the most irrational part of that is you always hear, well, gender is a construct, right? And you go, okay, that sounds like it's kind of like a metaphysical thing, right? Well, what does that mean? Yeah, you can't actually define it, right? And then you go, okay, so then why would you take something that you're arguing is subjective and out there in the ether, but your remedy is to manipulate your body, which is objective, right? Your biology is objective and here and physical. So why would chopping something off or adding something match a gender if genders aren't based on physicality? So this is irrational. I think it's actually beyond. I think it's spiritual warfare and it's demonic. I think it's actually demonic, but it's still irrational. But I think it should be, appropriately called just demonic. In my view.
You're absolutely right, man. I totally can see that now, that it is evil, it's dark, it's wicked, and it's a spirit that made a home in human beings, and it causes human beings to do the things they wouldn't ordinarily do, or prevent them from doing the right things, the things that they should be doing. And I know for a fact that the only way that you can overcome that, first of all, you have to want to overcome it. You got to question it yourself. And then only God can take that spirit away from you. But what the world has done, because it has taken the dark spirit and dressed it up by giving it names. You are an alcoholic. You are a lesbian. You are homosexual. You are this or you that. When it's really not that. You are possessed and it's evil that made a home in the flesh. And I think that if people saw it for what, I know if people saw it for what it really is without dressing it up with these fake names, then more people would start to overcome evil with good.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have to accept that there is evil in the world.
Yes.
Which for a lot of people who are kind of just naturalists who think we came from fishtails and stuff, all this ridiculous nonsense, they might not agree to that evil actually exists. They'll be like, well, everything's just a preference. And then you just give an example. But at the same time, they say, believing in God and teaching children that God exists and they came from love and God, they think that's evil. And I go, well, what's evil? All right. And so they can't answer. But yeah, that whole demon aspect, I believe, is the case. I believe that our thoughts are from God or they're from demons, and we have to navigate. And we could know that by our actions, right?
Yes.
We'll know which one. Now, people might hear that and go, "Oh, you're just blaming it on the demon." No, it still takes your will. It still takes your willingness to act against God. You can't just be. It's not like you get to say the demon reprogrammed your mind and now you're not responsible. It doesn't work like that. You have to be vacant enough and remain vacant enough for that to be the case. And so I think people are vacant. I think it's because of rejection of God and secularism and telling people that they're just specks of dust, right? They're meaningless, right? We're meaningless. We're just drifting in space meaninglessly. And people are taught this in the public schools all the way through academia. And it's also undergirded in all of the corporate environments where, you were once a monkey and now you're going to be a transcendental robot, right?
Yeah.
It's all nonsense. There's nothing true about it. And kind of people intuitively know this when you push it on them. Like,
Absolutely.
They don't, they can't account for love without God. They can't account for goodness without God. And if you ask them and they try, they say, well, it's just a physical thing in my brain. Okay. So you're a robot. So you're just a physical, a bundle of chemicals. How absurd is that? Right. It's way absurd to believe that than to believe in a creator, for sure.
Absolutely. I noticed that they seem to go in today's society. They seem to go after the children now, and they're set it up where the parents don't even have a say so about what somebody else is doing to their children, encouraging them to change body parts, encouraging them to hate white people or hate one another. Why do parents allow that to happen?
Again, the same reason. They're just rejecting truth, rejecting God. They think that children are their own individual developed beings who could make these choices. No, children need guidance. I mean, even arguing on behalf of children from their demonic perspective actually proves that we guide children and they need our guidance. Now, so if we both agree that children are under our guidance and stewardship, along with animals, by the way, then all we're really arguing about is whose guidance is proper and coherent and good and right. And so, children don't have that capacity yet. They need parents. They need their family members. They need grandpas and uncles, and the whole community of people is there to properly guide the children, right? And children, I have 3 of them. They seek the boundaries, and so what that left side is doing is trying to remove boundaries, boundaries for universal concepts like what it is to be a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman, or the fact that you can't be an animal, right? That's the next step, right? They're going to be like, I'm an animal. Mommy, I'm a monkey, right? Like, oh, that's so sweet. Let's get you a tail. Why not? From their view, why not? Right? They couldn't tell you why, right? And so the good news is that this kind of inversion, even though it's a horror show and we ought to stop it, the good news is that it has no place to go. It goes to pure absurdity. There's nowhere to go with it, right? And so it hits a point where people see and reject it. Now, we all have different thresholds. You and I obviously have a shorter threshold where you see this stuff and you call it out. Other people have longer thresholds, and you try to be charitable, but you also try to push it in their way and go, when are you going to draw the line? Like, when is it? And, we really are in a spiritual war. Those parents are just lost. They're just lost. And again, like we mentioned in the beginning, they're going with trends. They just go with trends, right? Well, if you go with trends and not absolute truth, if the trend goes off a cliff, that's on you, right? That's on you.
Can you brainwash people or a person without first demoralizing them?
No, you have to get them to like a flat state where they don't exist, basically, right? Or near that, right? That you erase all the concept of truth, and you're basically saying, let's rebuild truth on you, like a blank canvas, right? Sort of this construction of the person. And I think that happens pretty early, at least in our modern culture, where, especially in America, because everything is so driven toward individualism, which is important from a Christian view, that we are individuals. We have our
Yeah.
gifts, we have our discernment, we have our weaknesses, we have our proclivities. But looking at a child and looking at them as purely their own ultimate being, they're in their own universe, basically. And a parent can't say, can't step in and guide them in one direction or the other. I think that's the beginning of what you're referring to as far as brainwashing kids and people. You have to get them to a blank state. You have to clear out any notions of truth from their mind or their paradigm. Then you filter in some new stuff, right? You kind of give them a drip feed, which I think most mainstream media ends up being, which is why alternative media is very important today.